What's up, everybody? You're in the rotation. My name is Brian Jones. What was your first cannabis experience? I'll tell you mine. I was 19 years old. I was driving a friend to go skiing, and he whips out a dugout. For those that don't know what a dugout is, it is a one hitter, a pipe that takes a little bit of weed and hit it once or twice, and it gets you high. When he whipped this out, I completely lost my mind. I was 19. I had never been around cannabis. I had never smoked it. I had never considered smoking it. I proceeded to berate this person, and needless to say, they didn't smoke in my car, and they hold it against me to this day. Because as I sit here, I am now working in the insurance industry, working with cannabis companies, and have really taken a complete 180 on what I think of the plant, of its capabilities, and the black mark it was given all these years. 2016, I had moved to Denver, Colorado, and it completely changed my life. And the day that happened was when I took a grow tour. I immediately left the grow tour and came out with my mind blown. Not from inhaling fumes in a cannabis grow tour, but just the sentiment of what cannabis was and what it wasn't. It wasn't a bunch of stoners in a garage growing. This was a sophisticated business. And at that time, in 2017, we only had 9 states that were selling in the recreational market, 28 that had some form of medical. Only 3 were actually selling at that time in the recreational market. Canada had approved full recreational, full federal legalization. It wouldn't become mainstream, or wouldn't really start being sold on a recreational level until October of 2018. If you look at where we're at today, we have 18 states that have approved cannabis on a recreational basis, adult use, and 37 now, I believe, with Mississippi in some form of medical use. So I'd like to call myself a cannabis convert. I've come a long way, and I think what we're going to try to do here in the rotation is to help those who kind of have that same experience, those that don't, have their own conversion, their own evolution. We're going to talk about people we've met. We're going to talk about federal legalization. We're going to talk about the bills that have been put out there. We're going to talk about regulations, the overcomplicated regulations we see. We're going to talk about safe banking. It's been something that's been in the news a lot. We're going to talk about why a U.S. company can't list on a U.S. stock exchange if they're involved in cannabis, in certain parts of the cannabis market. We're going to talk about something called limited license states and the effects that have on everything from social equity, social justice, to opportunity. We're going to talk about products. We're going to talk about the fact that you can buy cannabis in so many variations right now. It doesn't have to be in flower. We're going to talk about some of the personalities in the space, and we're going to especially dig into those that are working in this industry. Here to help me is my partner, Patrick Ryder. We hope this podcast will help you, those that already use cannabis and those that don't, understand it better. That doesn't mean we expect you to start toking up on the reg, as they say. It just means your mind will be open just a little bit more to understand the past, the present, and the future of cannabis. So with that being said, Patrick, floor is yours.
Thanks, Brian. Brian and I have very different backgrounds as it comes to our beginning in cannabis. Some guys just kind of wandered into the woods and started smoking. Myself, I ended up in the backseat of one of my buddy's car, smoking a bowl, stuffing my face with Smart Food popcorn and chasing that with grape Gatorade. It was an amazing experience, and I have become a lifelong advocate ever since. I have tried marijuana in all of its forms, from the G13 from the reservations in upstate New York to that dirt stuff that we got out in Rochester while I was in college, and everything in between. In 2011, I moved to Colorado, and I really immersed myself in what is now an industry, right? It's an industry. It's not just a retail establishment. It's not just a grow house. This is filled with people and lawyers and attorneys and accountants and technology firms. There are a lot of cool people doing some very interesting stuff, and we're going to hear their stories on this show. With that in mind, our first guest, our first participant in the rotation is a friend of mine. His name is Brian Moran. He's the co-CEO and founder of Garden Remedies, a single state operator out of Massachusetts. And I want you to hear what they're doing. It's some pretty cool stuff. So we really hope you enjoy the show. And let's jump into the rotation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the first episode of the rotation. Today, we're really happy to introduce you guys to Brian Moran, the co-CEO of Garden Remedies. Brian has a wide and diverse background. He's a graduate of Doug Flutie University, also known as Boston College, and has a background professionally that spans from private equity to Big Five accounting, and now the co-CEO of a single state operator for the time being, Garden Remedies. With that, as this is the rotation, I'm going to pass it to the right. Brian, if you want to get us started, let's go.
I think the first thing we want to do is just tell us about yourself. I know obviously Patrick gave you a high level. We'd like to hear, your journey into cannabis first.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me. So yeah, as Pat said, I'm a Boston College guy. So I graduated from BC and stayed in the Boston area. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. And so I started in Big Four accounting, went to private equity at Bain Capital and spent 6 years there. And that was an amazing experience because it let me look at basically but most different types of industries, right? And so I was on the PE side, the value, and I did a ton of valuation work for the company there. But I also love small companies. And so as Pat said, I left Bain Capital and I went to a bioenergy startup. And then I went to a small fintech company before I jumped into cannabis, and I've been with Garden Remedies for about 2 years now. We're a single state operator, founded in 2013. We were the 8th medical license in Massachusetts. So we were one of the originals. Our founder, Dr. Karen Casey, was a board certified anesthesiologist. So we're the only woman medical founded cannabis company in Mass. So we're doing really well. We were like I said, the 8th med. We were the 2nd Boston area adult use license to have open, and now we're maxed out at having 6 medical adult use licenses in Mass.
Nice. Talk about Massachusetts, talk about competing in there, talk about battling against the big MSOs. How does Garden Remedies set themselves apart? We can also go into how Massachusetts has kind of kept it fair in terms of licensing caps. Just
Sure.
Kind of go through that and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Massachusetts has been a legal market for medical since 2016 and adult use since 2018. And it's been growing like crazy. So I think since 2018, we've had over $2.5 billion in sales. Last year, just for adult use, we broke 1.3 billion in adult use sales in the state, with another 300 to 350 million for medical. So it's a very healthy market in that regard. And we're seeing more growth in Massachusetts.
I read the other day that the amount of taxes in Massachusetts for cannabis sales recently surpassed the amount of taxes collected in alcohol sales. Now, when I think of Boston and I think of a good Irishman in Boston, that's a fascinating number to me, to think that the sale of cannabis has outpaced the sale of Guinness in Boston. Now, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Can you talk a little bit about the burden of taxation specifically in Massachusetts? And then again, the impacts of like a 280E rule and what that does to kind of squash what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really good point. So Pat, you're right. They just announced, hey, this year taxes or I think it was in December was the first month that excise taxes of cannabis outpaced excise taxes of alcohol. Well, what people need to understand is excise taxes on cannabis are everything in excess of our sales tax, which is 13.75%. So when you come to Massachusetts and you buy adult use, so non-medical cannabis, you're charged 20% tax at the register. 6.25 is normal Massachusetts state sales tax. And then there's another 13.75. 3% of that goes to the municipality on where you were. So they get 6% total, 3% through the state and 3% coming out of the cannabis operator. And then the remaining 10.75% is excise tax to the state. So that's all they're considering. And we've outpaced alcohol. If they put on top of that, the 3% host community agreement and 3% community impact fee, we would have probably outpaced it in 2019. Or I'm sorry, at the beginning of 2020. So if, again, estimated wise. So they're only including one type of tax. Massachusetts, so right now in Massachusetts, if you're a retailer, you deal with probably well, actually in any legal cannabis business, say in the country, you deal with 3 things that make you quote unquote uncompetitive. One is federal illegality, right? It's illegal from a federal basis. So every state has to be its own entity. And that federal illegality restricts what you can do for banking, what you can do for vendors, what you can do with your money, who can invest in you, what you can do about going public, any of those types of things. So federal illegality crushes us from just in that regard. But the other piece that you mentioned, Pat, is what's called 280E. Essentially what 280E is a law that was a tax law that was put into place for the mafia. And what the argument was if you're in a legal business, you shouldn't have the same rights as a legal business. Okay, fine, that's fair. So you can only deduct the cost of production of your illegal product under US taxes. You can't deduct anything else. So they've actually give illegal products some tax deductibility. It's only the cost of producing. So my company, who's vertically integrated, we grow, we produce essentially every type of product that's out there, pretty much. We sell them in our own stores and we distribute them to say 70 to 80 other dispensaries so far in the state. That company, we can only deduct the costs of making our products. My salary, my finance team, my marketing team, my retail team, the least we pay for our stores, none of that's tax deductible. So if you look at the economics, it crushes you. Like we pay if anyone's a business, like a regular business person or works in a manufacturing company, we pay our taxes on gross margin. So basically the revenue that we make, less only the cost it takes to produce the products under that. So every other cost, all of our general and administrative costs, millions and millions of dollars of costs that we need in order to operate this business, we don't get any tax benefit for.
Brian, you brought up an interesting point earlier, just all the taxation and the really the barriers to entry and the lack of social justice or the hard impacted communities. Everything I'm seeing is in the news is we need this for those social programs for these people that have been disenfranchised, put in jail. But it just seems like a lot of these states coming online now, limited license states, Massachusetts to some extent, it's just almost creating a framework where they'll never have a chance to get in there and actually profit from being a cannabis owner. And even when they do, it sounds like it's crushing unless you have a big kitty behind you.
Yeah.
And do you agree with that assessment, that the way that some of these states are doing it and regulating it to the hill is just it's going against everything that is being spewed in the narrative of why it should be legal as is? So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So here, I'll try to give another example. So just a regular retailer, right? A mom and pop, say it's a social equity, or just say it's someone that wants to set up a dispensary in their town. They're going to spend 2.5 to 3 years getting that set up right now on average. That's what it took in Massachusetts. I mean, some towns still don't have. Cambridge, which is one of the larger towns in Massachusetts, still has 0 dispensaries because of, again, they're trying to do it in a way that's actually beneficial to social equity, in that they're only going to license social equity for the first 2 years, but since they haven't opened it yet, I think they extended it. So there are certain towns that are taking the firm stance of, no, we're not doing this. And they're getting crushed for it in the news and all that, but they're trying to do it. Somerville's another town in Massachusetts that's doing a 1-to-1. Every time they approve a social equity, then they will prove a non-social equity. So they're another town. So there are certain municipalities trying to focus, but you're right. That was the original focus of this, is expungements, decriminalization, and then trying to focus on social equity. But I'll give you high level the economics of social equity. So say you're a retailer in a town, and say it's a $5 million a year revenue company, right? $5 million a year is not huge, right? You're talking about 45 to 50,000. Is that right? 45 to, yeah, 45 to 50,000 a month. No, that's not right. 400,000 a month, like 400,000 or so a month, 400,000 a month. There you go. My decimal places were off a little bit. But anyway, so they're talking about 400,000 a month or so of sales, right? If you take that $5 million revenue company, the way it works in Massachusetts and in a lot of work is you have to buy wholesale, right? So they don't produce their own stuff. So they have to go out to the market and buy wholesale. When they come out to a group like us or a group that's out there, we usually sell on average our inventory at about 50% what they're going to sell it at their wholesale, right? So they do about 100% markup, which is routine, I would say, in a wholesale to retail workup. So for a $5 million revenue company, they have to spend about $2.5 million on their revenue, right? Or on their inventory, just to put it on the shelves to be able to sell it. That means they have about $2.5 million left. That $2.5 million right there, before they spend $1 on anything else or take $1 for themselves for compensation, that $2.5 million is what they're taxed on. So take that $2.5 million times just under 30%, because it's a 21% federal tax rate and an 8% in Massachusetts, 8 or so percent in state. And you really, again, I write up to 30, but say you could go 28, 29, blah, blah, blah. That's in and of itself right there, their tax bill that they're going to have to pay. So $2.5 million times 30%, like that's 750 grand,
yeah, so
grand.
They don't get to deduct anything because they're not producing it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So take that $2.5 million that they were left after they buy their inventory, subtract another $800,000 because that's what they're paying in taxes. That's what they're starting with to do everything else. They have $1.7 million to pay all their workers, pay their lease, pay their electricity, pay their insurance, pay their licensing fees, pay their registration fees, pay their marketing for supplies. Maybe after all of that, pay themselves a little bit. But that also assumes that they were handed everything without having to take on any debt or put any money in up front, which when it's a 2 to 3 year licensing process, that's obviously not the case.
Yeah, it takes a long time and a lot of money to get to that point where you're selling $5 million.
Yeah, I estimated out, and again, I've run this through with groups. If you're a standalone, you make cash wise, and this is if you do it perfectly and you haven't had to spend anything in the past, 14% of your revenue is what you actually collect at the end of the year for cash. So you're making basically 14% cash flow yield with an insane amount of risk, and that doesn't take into consideration any money you put in previously.
And what does that
you're
take?
You're get taxed on that 600,000 again for as income.
100%, yeah, as income. So Brian, what does it take, right, for a single state, single location retail opportunity, social equity candidate? What does that startup capital look like?
So it depends what you're doing. So a retailer, again, it depends where you are and how long. What I can tell you is all in, if you find a retail location where you're going to have to do a fit out, where you're probably going to have to spend at least 18 to 36 months of development, because a lot of times it's you find your locality, you have to make sure that the locality approves of it. Then you have to get in and deal with the municipality. In Massachusetts, you have to work with the municipality and say, understand, okay, before I can even get a provisional license, I have to get an approval and support from the community. So you apply for a special permit in most communities because they don't allow you to just put a retailer wherever you want. They don't want these wherever you want. So you have to usually apply for a special permit, find a place that will actually do it. So find a location. Then once you do that, find your location, work with the town, you work on your special permit, you'll get an HCA. Then you can actually go to the state and apply for a provisional license. Once you get that provisional license, so say it comes all the way through, then what you need to do is spend the time building out. Right. So once you get your provisional license, you basically are saying you can, they approve of you having it here. You just have to get to the point where you can actually operate it. So then you have to go from provisional to final. What that essentially is you raise all your money, you close your business up, you do all the construction, you get everything built out, and then you get to a point what's called your PPLI, your post-provision license inspection. And that's essentially the critical one. That's the one where it's the first time they run you through everything. Do you have your cameras at all the right angles? Do you have your inventory executed correctly? Show me how you do in and out of your inventory. Show me a sale. Show me a this. Show me a that. They get all that done. Then you get you basically get your final approval, which comes on a monthly basis. They give the approvals. And then at that point, you get what's called you basically get a notice to commence operations, usually say 30 to 45 days after that. So it's anywhere from, like I said, if you're super fast, I'm sure you could do it in 18 to 24 months, depending on what you need to do. But most people on average have been 2 to 3+ years, depending on, if we did since 2018, right? So 2018 was adult use. If you had anyone in Cambridge or anyone in Somerville that applied in 2018, they're in their 4th year, 3rd year, 3rd+ year.
That's crazy. The one thing that I notice hearing you talk about all the hoops you have to jump through and just the security that has to be put on these buildings, it's like we're creating our own cartel. It's crazy to me. If the feds just said it's legal, it would just be a supply and demand capitalism play, right? But they can't do that. And it kills me to watch this business get bled to death with taxes and so forth. But we'll move on from that. I don't want to keep beating the drum on that, although I could for hours. That's a good segue into what we want to go to next is, what changes are coming and what would you like to see happen in the Massachusetts market?
Oh, sure. Well, so first, I always want to talk about expungement and decriminalization stuff. Mass has not done the greatest job. And it's just, it's something that's coming up 3 years or so in. It's just too hard in Massachusetts right now for people to get their nonviolent drug offenses expunged, removed, all that type of stuff. So that's one thing that I would love to see, and it's being worked on right now in the legislature. For these businesses, there are a couple things. Obviously, the HCAs are tough. Like the 3% payment to the municipalities for the negative impact of our businesses on their community is just ridiculous. What other business has to pay a percentage of their sales other than, again, a casino? And they don't do it usually to the municipality. They do it usually to the state. So that's something that I think would be beneficial. It's small. Obviously, 280E is a big thing, but that's federal. So obviously Massachusetts isn't going to be able to do anything there. Massachusetts could change their tax rules to not follow the federal government and actually treat us as a legal business. But that would take them developing their own tax rules for the Mass DOR. And again, I think there's legislation on that, but it's not going anywhere. There are some other bills that I think the CCC are focusing on. So one right now is focused on social equity, to actually create a social equity fund using some of the cannabis taxes that have been collected. So that would be a great one. And I think there's also another one focused on fixing some of the HCA stuff, so they make it specific. That gives the CCC the ability to get involved if the HCAs are being a little bit too much. And then the last thing I would say is there's focuses on delivery. So delivery is an area in Massachusetts where they've only allowed social equity companies to apply. It's basically it's being saved for social equity, if you will. Problem is the way that the regulation is in place, it makes these businesses just loss leaders. They have to actually have 2 drivers, both cameraed, for every delivery. And having 2 drivers in a vehicle, Uber drivers can barely make it work with 1, let alone having 2 that have to be registered with the CCC, fully background checked, all this other stuff that we have to do. So again, it's a situation where the regulation is basically killing the business. So there are some things out there, but it's, again, if it doesn't move fast enough, you're gonna see some unfortunate things unless they.
It's amazing they treat this like you're carrying an armored car. You have $3,000 to $5,000 of cannabis products in your car, and you have to have 2 people at all times. That's interesting. So.
Oh yeah. No, it's the world we live in currently, but it is changing. Again, slow. You could see it everywhere. It is slowly changing. It's way too slow for us, but we get it.
Brian, we just laid out all of the hurdles, the barriers to entry, some of the issues that are facing the industry specifically in Massachusetts. And Garden Remedies, quite frankly, has done very well. You guys have created a wonderful brand there in Massachusetts. And I wanted to talk a little bit about your company and what you guys are doing right now and give you a platform to tell us, some of the cool shit that's going on with Garden Remedies. And, specifically, you and I had an opportunity to chat a little bit about the role of craft products and where they're going to fit in as these huge multi-state operators kind of come into new markets and bring their Costco mentality to the cannabis industry. So if you want to just touch on what you guys are doing, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. So at Garden Remedies, as we talked about, we're only in Massachusetts right now. We did that specifically because we want to go deeper than just being an MSO. So our board basically said, we want you to get to scale. We want you to focus and build out who you want to be in this state before we start talking about other states. And that's really what our focus has been. So what we did is we've really focused on making sure we provide good quality products, but also have the education and the content behind it. Because really, we kind of serve two groups right now, two major groups, if you will. The cannabis consumer right now makes up about 24% in Massachusetts of adults, which is big. It's bigger than, I think it was 18 or 19% pre-legalization. So you've seen some decent growth in that. But so that's about a quarter of all Massachusetts adults. They love the cannabis products as they are, the flower, the concentrates, we call them quote unquote connoisseurs, or those types of users. But then there's about 58 to 60% of the market, which is two different groups, what we call lapsed users. So people that smoked in college but haven't since, type of thing, or haven't smoked in a few years, or non-users that are interested. So people that say, I've never really used, maybe I used once or twice in college, or I've taken one puffer, I've never done it at all, but I'm hearing more and more about it. That makes it 58%. Those people are both A, interested, and B, engaged in learning more. The last group of whatever it ends up being, 23%, I think it is the group that is not interested. So right now, the actual cannabis industry, that's about 1.3 billion, is only 24% of our population, right? We're going to see major growth in the non-major users. So what we're doing, sorry, to kind of long story short, is we're kind of trying to cater to both of those groups in using our different product suites. So we have very strong flower that's parts of it are hand trimmed, and then we make those elite high-level products for either elite flower or concentrates. So we came out with a live rosin that is just phenomenal. We focus on those high-end, smaller batch products because that's what those quote-unquote connoisseurs or those heavier users are focused on. But at the same token, then on some of our other products, like our vapes and our edibles, we're focusing on the newer user. The newer user use those as kind of the first products to come into cannabis, a gummy to help them sleep or something like that. So what we've done is kind of split our portfolio and then tried to really hyper-focus on what are people looking to use and why. And so what we've spent a lot of time on is building out an effect-based line that helps people in both our gummies and vapes be able to pick their effect, right? So if you're looking for help to sleep, we have a wide range of products. We have a Serenity gummy, which is a THC distillate gummy that has a dash of, oh my goodness, my brain is, what did people take at night for a vitamin that you take?
Melatonin?
Melatonin, there you go. I apologize. Yeah, with a dash of melatonin in it. We have our Clarity line, or our Energy line is, again, THC distillate with like a B12 combination. So what we've done is essentially tried to take a product that people are used to taking, a daily energy supplement, a daily sleep supplement, and basically add some fuel to it. And it helps to translate it and get people that first step. And then if they're interested in it, then they can take that next step. If they want to go to vapes, we only put cannabis in our vapes. We don't add any additive, any CBD, any hemp, any topic. We only use what we have taken from our own, but we'll then take those terpenes and combine them into such a way that is a sleep vape, a Serenity vape that is focused on indica strains that pronounce sleep, that focus on sleep. The other thing we built is we do a lot of work in R&D. So we actually worked with a group called Real Isolates and created a Sleep Plus pill. And that is a pill that takes CBG, which is the sleep CBN, which is known as like a major sleep cannabinoid. The way that we actually extract it is it comes out of smoke. It actually is one of the pyrocannabinoids. And so what we did is this group developed a way that we could actually smoke the cannabis and capture the CBN in active form. And now we put it in a pill, and it's a 5 to 2 CBN to THC pill. So it's been reviewed by a lot of groups, and we got actually some CBS News did a report on it in Boston. It was pretty cool. So what we're really focused on is twofold: catering to the big cannabis users with our hard, like those cannabis products that people love, but also creating a way for people that are learning about cannabis to kind of work their way into it slowly.
I think that's a big market that's going to be coming, that market of people that have never used it, and you just kind of give them baby steps in. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, and same thing, topicals. I'll tell you, elderly is one of the biggest growing groups, and it's not for getting high or feeling the impacts. Most of it's for topical reasons. And the topicals that we're able to sell with the THC in it, it really does help. My wife had ankle surgery like 2 years ago, and I kind of used her as a good marketing test. And I kind of brought in as many of the topicals, one from a CBD company, one from this, one from that, and then one from us. And she easily could tell the difference that the THC one gave her better pain relief. So again, that's our own personal kind of biases, if you will. But what's great too is there's more and more studies being done in the US, finally.
That's hilarious. Brian, you mentioned the news story on CBS, and I know you guys have a partnership, I think it's with Patriot's Place. Can you tell us, and I want to kind of wrap up here, about getting the word out. So can you tell us a little bit about the Patriot's Place experience? And then secondarily, how are you guys advertising, right? It's not like you can go on TV and have a commercial. So tell me a little bit about how you're getting the word out there about what Garden Remedies is doing.
Sure. So it's difficult. So there are a lot of regulations on what we can do. The simplest regulation to think about is really like TV ads are pretty, they'll do articles and things like that. We can't actually do advertisements on TV currently, I don't believe. But it is slowly but surely getting better. Groups that hadn't been in the marketing or advertising framework that would kind of just laugh at us are now calling and saying, hey, we may be interested in doing the story. So like Hearst Media is actually reaching out to cannabis companies now, and that's the first time they've ever even considered it. So it is becoming more quote unquote mainstream, if you will, but there are a ton of restrictions. So we worked closely with Kraft Sports Entertainment on helping them. Basically, our focus was education on cannabis. And we went to them and said, look, as you guys said, it's really hard to advertise or educate people on cannabis outside of what we call kind of the cannabis bubble, right? Since it's restricted, it's really easy to talk to each other in your own echo chamber. But to get people to join that echo chamber or hear what's going on, it's hard to do. And so our team kind of focused on, and even working with our board, is saying, look, more education is good for the industry as a whole, and as a whole, that will help us as well. So what we thought about doing is, can we find some strategic partnerships that would allow us to educate more of the masses in situations where there's not cannabis? And and Patriot Place was one of those areas. The reason it's a little bit unique is it's not, Patriot Place is separated from Gillette Stadium, right? And the Kraft Sports Entertainment Group does more than just the Patriots, because obviously sports entertainment has a lot of restrictions associated with it. And frankly, before legality, you would never expect any of those companies, those leagues, to probably do a whole lot with it. But so what we did is we worked with the Kraft Group on using Patriot Place. So we have advertisements in Patriot Place on their digital displays. We also have a billboard on Route 1 going into Patriot Place. Again, we are allowed to do billboards in the state of Massachusetts as long as I think it's 85% 21 plus. So we actually literally have to get studies from every billboard provider that have been done to prove that it's over that, or we couldn't put a billboard up. So again, that's stuff that we do. But we also, the other thing that we worked with Kraft on a slow and gradual basis is we had our team do activations during Patriots games. So Patriot Place is essentially a big outdoor mall area that's right attached, that is within walking distance to Gillette Stadium. So they basically created this area. So what we did, what Kraft Sports allowed us to do, is set up a couple of tents in Patriot Place pregame during that time. And what we were able to do is just be educational. We were handing out some educational information, only 21 plus, or some swag, things of that nature. But all we were trying to do is engage with people on cannabis and have them understand, hey, this is who we are at Garden Remedies, but this is why you're seeing those billboards everywhere. This is what you're hearing. We're here to answer questions. We're here to tell you about it. We partnered with some local dispensaries because ours aren't directly there with Foxborough. So we partnered with a couple of close one, or with one close one, to be able to kind of do some gift if you go there afterward type of thing. So again, just trying to get the word out. So our goal with that is kind of just to break through that bubble as much as we can. And again, we worked closely with the folks at Kraft to make sure we're doing it in a compliant manner, making sure that we're not going, because there's simple things such as, like, if a owner of a building has, or if a building has a mortgage, that bank may have put in there that you can't have any illegal activity on the premises. And again, if it depends how they determine what's illegal activity per the legal document. Is it federal or state or both, right? So there are nuances like that that you have to go into if you're trying to look at a strategic partnership. But what we want to do is find groups that are willing to work with us to do that, because it might be small now, but it's going to grow, and it's going to continue to grow more and more, whether it's the market itself or education or just the acceptance of cannabis. So it's great. We like working, and we try to do this education in as many places we can. We've worked with comedy festivals to do work. Again, outside of just the cannabis bubble, we try to work with music, with comedy, tons of community service programs we do. We actually do a Calling All Pros, which is we do a specific vape, Music for Change, that the proceeds go to a group. Every month we dedicate one of our pre-roll strains to, well, what we call our Puff Puff Give program, but we're actually rebranding it for one of our employees died last year, and so we're rebranding it to him. But yeah, so all the proceeds from that strain from that month, they go to specific charities in the area. So we pride ourselves on trying to do that and be in the community as much as we can.
You know, you talked about some of the studies you had to do, and the guardrails that have been put in place by these states, not just Massachusetts, but all these states. It's almost like they're making it up as they go. And as more acceptance comes, the less they're just like, at some point it's just going to be enough. Like, here's what we got, but it takes time to change that mentality. And that middle 50-some% you're talking about, once that happens, once they all take a gummy to go to sleep and they realize, oh my God, my mind was all restful and I slept for 8 hours and I didn't wake up, and
I didn't have a hangover. I didn't wake up trying to kill my neighbor because I took Ambien or whatever it is.
Yeah, and the other thing you said, just doing it while people are tailgating. Well, what do people do at tailgates? They drink enormous amounts of beer, alcohol, whatever, and then they go do stupid shit. So, yeah, I think it's great what you guys are doing, getting out there, educating.
Yeah, make those incentives pregame instead of postgame, please. It would make the experience so much better.
Again, no cannabis products whatsoever.
Yes, we understand. That message is out there. We agree.
100%.
Yes,
yeah, but no, and again, it's the long game. Like, cannabis is the long game. But I'll tell you, like, the long game is replacement of alcohol. I mean, you can ultimately look at it and say there are negative physical, emotional, societal ramifications of alcohol. You could probably make an argument on a lot of things with that. Cannabis, yes, you can probably make some of those arguments. There are unknown and known but unproven or straight proven benefits as well. Like, I'm a medical patient. I tell people, I'm a medical patient. I had chronic migraines. I literally tried every migraine medication in my life. They put me on blood pressure medication at one point to try to fix my migraines, and it gave me high blood pressure. Like, I spent 5 years battling migraines badly. And I now use a regular CBD THC tincture on an evening basis. And I literally am on no pill for my migraines and that's been 2.5 years, 3 years now, after 5 to 8 years of just being on every pill known to man.
I mean, if you can't take I will tell you this, I took my kid to a Carolina Panthers game this year, and after the game, during the game, you just see guys walking in and out, two double-fisted 20-ounce cans of beer. And then afterwards, I saw a couple fights on YouTube or wherever it was, Twitter came on. Every one of us knows of the disastrous effects of alcohol and how many, I think it's estimated 100,000 people die of alcohol every year. They've been smoking weed for a long time. You just don't hear that. Now, we get arguments against that, but if anybody that thinks the instant courage is winning in America, it's not winning anywhere. Too many of those things are negative negative side effects of bad parenting, bad lives. So
No, it's brutal. And again, yeah. So ultimately, it's getting better in cannabis, but it's still tough. Like it's easily. I've been in a lot of high stress industries like private equity, accounting, bioenergy startup. Like I've done a lot of. This is easily the most difficult job I've ever done in my life. Like
you and me both, man. I just started a cannabis D&O shop, so I know what you're feeling there.
Yeah, and it's wild. So, but at the same token, I will say, I love it because the people are so passionate about it. Like I've never been in an industry where people come together so organically in a positive manner. Yes, it's not all the time. Yes, there are bad actors. Yes, there's this, but everyone knows it's so difficult, and the only way you're going to be able to do it is work together. And it's it's built a community that is just resilient. So I'm fearful. I'm worried about some businesses, and I'm worried that there's going to be some negative. But overall, if we can continue to push forward, like this is an exciting and a very cool industry.
Well, I think, that's a great place to finish. I think your passion has certainly shown through. Thank Patrick for, introducing you and I, because I look at your passion and how it's changed your life. I'm certainly a convert. I don't believe that is the evil thing that people said growing up. It is certainly there are a lot of benefits to it. And I can't wait to see what Garden Remedies does. I can't wait to see what the whole market does. There's going to be losers in terms of businesses that go out of business, but that's been America for as long as I know, and as long as cannabis, the education keeps getting out there about what it is and what it isn't, I think we're doing our jobs. So
absolutely.
And I'll just wrap it up with this, Brian. Congratulations, thank you, and good luck.
Thanks, man. No, I'm excited for you guys. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I appreciate you guys having me on. And yeah, obviously check out our website and reach out to me if anyone has any questions.
Do you want to say the website? Why don't you say the website?
So we're at gardenremedies.com, one word. And then you can reach out to me. Like I'm on, I don't even know what I'm on. I need to do this, right? I need to go through. I'm partially on some social media, but you can
you know what? Just ask Jackie to take care of it.
Yeah, seriously.
We'll tag it. We'll tag it to the episode notes.
If anyone wants to, how it works for my company, literally, if someone sends a note to our About Us and drops an email and says, "Hey, I want to talk to Brian," they forward it to me, and I usually reach out. Like we're small. We're still a small business in that regard. So I'd be happy to talk to people if they're interested in learning more.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
All right.
All right, everybody. That was Brian Moran from Garden Remedies, CEO and co-founder. Really provided some great insight into what's going on in Massachusetts, what's going right, what could be a little bit better, and a glimpse into the future of the industry inside the great state of Massachusetts. Really want to thank the team for Garden Remedies for coming on and being really our first case, our test study, and we think it was a great way for us to kick this off.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I'll reiterate Patrick's points about Brian. A great guest, great conduit of information in Massachusetts. One thing we want to do here on the rotation is throw out some stats, throw out some numbers that kind of give you a sense of where the cannabis market is. A couple things that I've read this week. The state of Michigan released their January report, and I want to just point out some things here. So Michigan's a state of 10 million people. And in the month of January, they sold, on a medical basis, they sold 109,000 of medical marijuana in the smokable form. And then in recreational side, they sold almost 400,000 ounces of cannabis in a smokable form. Comparing that to Florida, in Florida for January, Florida has it a little different. They only went from the week of January 7th and then all the way up to the week of January 28th, but it's still 31 days. So what they put out there in their medical, they sold almost 300,000 ounces in a smokable form. If you take the population difference there from Michigan to Florida, which is Michigan 10 million, Florida 22, and you extrapolate those numbers, on a recreational basis, Florida, if the day they go, will be selling over 1 million ounces of smokable cannabis. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is next week here on in the rotation, you're going to meet a gentleman who's working real hard to come back from something that happened to him when he was 19. And we're going to jump into a little bit of the social equity and how, we're talking over 1.4 million ounces being sold in the state of Florida in a month when they go recreational, to someone who was charged with a felony for less than a half an ounce. So we hope you join us. We hope you enjoyed our first episode here, and we can't wait to see you next week in the rotation.